Howdy, my friends, and welcome into today's episode of Forte Catholic. I am so glad that you are here joining us today. We have a special guest co-host today. It's another priest, Father Will Rooney. He is the associate pastor here at our parish. I've known him for about a decade, and I thought he'd be great for the show because we've had similar conversations to the conversations that we have on today's show over a drink or at the rectory or just after Mass. I really enjoyed talking to him. He is incredibly smart, probably 100 IQ points higher than me, and also really, really personable. And I know that you're going to enjoy him. We talk about the Mass and pastoral care in general, but especially pastoral care for people on Sundays whenever they come to Mass. I also talk about slippery slope arguments and how I'm not really a fan of the term. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's episode, enjoy my conversations with Father Will Rooney. Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Sroll. This is Father Anthony Sharapa. No, I'm just kidding.
It's false.
We've got a priest in person, which is always very helpful. In persona Christi, in persona, Father Will Rooney, who I've talked about on the show quite a bit, but I've never had on the show. So you are here. You've done hours of studying, listening to the show. You're going to refute everything I've ever said about you.
That's not true. I unfortunately have not listened to any of Forte Catholic.
I mean, you say that like I'm surprised.
Oh my gosh.
No one that I care about listens to this show. I'm just kidding. There's 5 of you.
But man, he loves those 5.
I really do. And if you are one of those 5, you are loved. If you're not one of those 5, you're not, but
you could be.
You're the people including people into this 5. Life is good, but it could be better. Do you know that? You don't know any movie references.
No, I got the first one that you just made right before we started.
Oh,
which was Lion King.
2.
Yeah,
50%.
Yeah.
Very good. You know movies from before you entered seminary.
Yeah, more or less. That's kind of true. Yeah, I was actually. Yeah. Anyway,
moralless. You're moralless, is what you just.
More or less. More or less. Oh my gosh, this guy.
So I have talked about you on the show. Primarily, the primary thing that I've done is I guess there's 2 primary things. One, I've stolen your content like from homilies and stuff and used it as my own and didn't give you any credit.
Wow, I'm honored.
Secondly, but I also made them shorter because your homilies are too long. But the other thing that I've done is I talked about you a lot during last fall because we, as in you, but our parish, found ourselves in a situation that most parishes don't typically find themselves in when our pastor took a sabbatical after Sabbath, meaning 7. Every 7 years, priests are supposed to get a break. It had been 17. They missed a number. They misunderstood the Latin. So finally, after 17 years of serving the Lord and the church, they gave him a break, which is great. We've talked about it before. But the interesting thing was whenever he left, you were still pretty new. You had been there for 5 months, 4 months.
When he left, I had been there at St. Joseph's 2 months.
2 months. Okay. So
yes.
Yeah. So new to the parish, but also this was your second assignment.
Yeah. So I'd been a priest 2 years.
You had been, and now it's 3. Have you had your 3 years?
No, 3 will be in June.
Oh, wow.
Next June.
So you're still pretty new to this.
Yeah.
But you were essentially the acting pastor for. I mean, in all intents and purposes, not intensive purposes.
Not intensive purposes, but yes.
But it was intensive.
It was intensive. I learned a lot in those 4 months or 3 months that Father Brown was gone. Yeah.
So when it was just a situation that I had never been a part of, and I hadn't really seen. Like typically, when I hear sabbatical, I think like college professors, they go study or whatever. But the church wanted to finally take care of one of its priests, and I was really happy about that. But in doing so, it had to not care about you for a little while.
I felt cared for, and the parish. Father Brian set me up pretty well with like a leadership team and a group of people.
A great leadership,
an amazing leadership team, an amazing parish council.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's
some of the best people.
There's some good people.
Some good. There are 5 good people. Oh man,
that's awesome.
But it was interesting in both senses that 1, the primary pastor, like the pastor of the parish, was gone.
Yeah.
But 2, that you were the pastor for 3 months.
Yeah.
2 years into your priesthood, which like is kind of crazy.
It is crazy.
And So it's an intriguing situation, but also like you did very well, which was cool.
I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's just, it was like when Bishop called me, or actually it was like a priest on the personnel board that called me and said, "Hey, you're gonna go to St. Joe's." It was kind of like okay, I'm going back home. And then they said, and by the way, you may have not heard, or you may have heard, Father Brian's going on sabbatical for 3 months. And
when we say you're going to St. Joseph's, you are running St. Joseph's.
You're running St. Joseph's. I'm just so thankful for all the people that like are at St. Joe's, that we just have a really great team. And with all of its craziness, which I'm sure Taylor has shared some of the craziness.
I sure have. People who have been listening to the show for 4 or 5 years know how different our parish is. Very much so. Very much so. But we are very thankful, primarily to Father Brian and to you, because Father Brian, the moment he got here was the catalyst for change. Yeah. And then when you got here, it was just like it just kept growing, like a snowball, right? Snowball going down the thing. Hopefully we don't crash down at the bottom anytime soon, but that's what we're doing. So what's interesting about you being assigned here is that you and I met a decade ago.
Yes.
And so did our DRE. I met our DRE a decade ago, because all three of us were on the same mission trip that I've talked about it before. I'd go growing up in high school, college. I'd go on this mission trip every summer. And one time there was this. I think you like legit. Was it your first summer after seminary?
Yeah, it was my first. Seminary? Yeah, it was after my first year of seminary. I was at St. William's in Round Rock, and my home parish was just St. Thomas Aquinas here in College Station. Asked me if I could go on this mission trip, and I said yes. And the pastor at that place said yes, and so I went, and it was great. And I met Taylor.
Yeah, we did. It was
a defining moment of my life.
I liked you a lot. I wasn't sure if the priesthood was really your calling, but no, I'm just kidding. You were great. I don't have a lot of specific memories with you on that trip, but I do have one that is like a glaring moment of like the moment that we like officially met.
I'm interested.
This is very funny because the mission trip, yes, we did a lot of great work, and we went on the VBS, and we did VBS in the morning.
We helped people learn about Jesus. It was great.
We practically rebuilt houses in the afternoon. But the moment that I remember you, where I'm sure we shook hands the night before, but the first day before we start all the big stuff, we would always go to South Padre Island, and have a big community day and fun at the beach and get sunburned and ruin our week. But the specific moment that I remember actually meeting and talking to you was on the pavilion at South Padre Island, and we had a relatively long conversation. So I don't remember like the moment of hello, my name's Taylor. That was probably the night before.
Sure, yeah.
But that was when we had a conversation. It was me and you, and then Kevin, who's our DRE now at the parish, came in and talked because y'all knew each other, and then he left, and we talked for probably, 20, 30 minutes, and I was like, well, I like this guy. And then 9 years later, you're my pastor for 3 months.
Yes. Yes. Oh, how the tables have turned.
My, how the turns tabled.
The turns table.
You know show reference?
Table? Hold on. The turns table? No.
My, how the turntable.
What are we referencing?
The Office.
Oh, I literally was gonna guess The Office, and I should have just gone with it. I have actually. I've watched it all. I've watched all The Office, all the Parks and Rec.
So if you've watched all of The Office and Parks and Rec, which one is your current parish office more like?
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna go with The Office, but Michael Scott and Father Brian are not the same person.
I'm honestly surprised you answered the question. You haven't been around me in the show long. If you had listened to the show before, you would know that you could have not answered that question.
No, it's okay. I'm all right.
So my wife works at the parish, and you said that it's The Office. So who is my wife at the parish? There is a right answer.
Oh man, isn't it? Would she be Pam? I don't know.
That's a good guess, and I'll accept that. I am very Jimish. I'm not as good looking, but kind of the funny guy, right? But the correct answer is whoever the character's name that Rashida Jones plays. She's one of the hottest women alive, and I have a crush on her. So we're gonna say that's my wife. She's also got a little bit of melanin in her skin, so that's why it's my wife. Yeah. So,
fair enough.
Oh man, this is gonna be a fun game. We're gonna play offline. We're gonna
figure out the old.
We just won't do that here because you like serving.
I do like to work at St. Joseph, and I don't know.
But right when, so I remember that. I remember another time when we worked, when I've lived here for about 8 years. This is the area where you're from.
Yeah.
And I remember one time, I think, again, kind of off of my timelines, but I think it was either right before your deacon ordination or right after. So like when you were a year away from becoming a priest, you came into town, and for whatever reason we connected, and we went and I had never had beef tips before.
Yeah, we had barbecue,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, like burnt ends or something at some, I don't know how that ended up happening.
It was like, I think, if I remember right, I initiated us hanging out, but you were like, here's where we're going to go eat, and it's this really cool place. And it was really good, and you ordered beef tips, and I'd never had beef tips before.
Yeah.
And they were very good.
It was great.
Very random memories.
Yes, that's kind of the story of our interactions prior to me coming to St. Joseph. Is these sporadic? Oh yeah, you're actually Catholic and you're serious about your faith and that kind of thing. It's pretty awesome.
And then you met me, or then you got to know me. You realized that was a facade.
Oh my gosh. No, I'd say you're pretty serious about this stuff.
Publicly, I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh.
But there was I have a pretty good memory. So the fact that you pointed out something to me today that I had forgotten, like, actually made me feel bad, because I'm the person that remembers
stuff.
Like I have I don't have a photographic memory, but I'm pretty good at audio stuff. Where if I hear something, I can pretty much repeat our conversations back, right? Unless it's this podcast, because I record it every week. People will argue with me about something I said 32 weeks ago. I was like, I don't know, man. I don't care anymore. It's been half a year.
I have no idea. Yeah. That's how I feel about homilies about 3 minutes after I give them.
Oh yeah. That's how I feel about your homilies about 3 minutes after you give them too.
You are like the most critical friend that I have with regard to homilies. It's wonderful.
But this is a personality thing. So. Have you ever? Oh, I think you had. Did you take the spiritual gifts assessment? You were around whenever we took it at our parish.
No, I don't think so.
So spiritual gifts assessment, we've talked about it on here before, but you should take it. I can give you one. It'd probably be good to know what you're good at spiritually as a priest, that sort of thing. But because you're active in your faith, you're very well formed. All this stuff, right?
Yeah.
I would imagine most people that take it, that are, whether they're priests or lay people, but that are pursuing God and pursuing faith, they take the test and they could have circled 3 or 4. So we always do top 5. You could have circled 3 and most people 4, but the fifth top one, typically surprises people.
That's interesting.
So the one for me that surprised me was that I got encouragement.
Yeah.
Which, like, I'm the most sarcastic person.
You're pretty dang sarcastic.
And, like, especially in church stuff, because everybody's like, we have to be nice all the time. I'm like, that's not fun.
That's not. And it's not true.
Right. Yeah, exactly. 100%. So, but it was interesting because it's this dynamic where I probably am the person most critical. One, because I have the relationship. Who else is going to come out and be like, actually, it was John chapter 4, not chapter 6, you dummy.
Yeah. Man, a little bit long there, Padre. A little bit long.
No one else is coming out to do that. But at the same time, I remember another thing I remember vividly is, like, maybe the first month or 2, I'm very playful and I was messing with you. Yeah. And then I think 2 months in, I was like, that's one of the best homilies I've heard in a while. And it was
really moving. You actually said that was really good. I was like, Taylor said it was good. It must be decent, right?
Right. So I tear people down for 2 months, but that one compliment just skyrockets me in their mind. So
that's good. That is. Yeah.
But the memory thing, there was something you told me today, right when you walked in. You're parked right there. You walked in the house and you said,
I've been here before.
And I was like, I don't think you have. Because in my mind, I was like, it has been an idea for Sam and I to invite you and Father Brian over for forever. We just haven't done it. Yeah. Right. So I was like, you haven't, though. Like, you haven't. And then you reminded me that you have, in pretty tremendous fashion, actually.
Yeah. I helped you move in.
You 100% helped me move in. And I totally forgot. And I vividly remember there's a set of brothers, the Calhoun brothers. Yeah. They were helping. And I asked them, like, through text message, but I had forgotten. You mentioned this weekend. I posted something on Facebook, like, hey, if you're in the area, we're new to the area. We don't know a ton of people. So can you come help? And you helped us move from one of the creepiest locations ever.
Yeah. There was like a weird shed in the back, right? Or something.
The whole house. It was an old house that had no electricity in it anymore. And that was our storage shed, because we got to use it for free as a parishioner at your old parish, actually. And so they let us use it to save money, because we were moving here. We had no money. We were missionaries. Like, we had no money. And we were moving at like midnight. And it was terrifying. And you did that with me, and I totally forgot. So this incredibly nice gesture that you did, and all I remember is the beef tips and talking to you at South Padre.
Did you have kids then?
I did. So we had a baby. They weren't here.
Okay.
Whenever we were moving, but I had a 2-year-old and like a
baby.
January to June, like a 6-month-old.
Okay.
So
yeah, you
helped me. Like essentially, it was me and whatever guys I could muster because my wife and the babies were still at home.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yeah, absolutely crazy. So, you got ordained, and
I'm the COVID class.
The COVID class.
Yeah, 2020.
All forever tainted.
Forever tainted. Forever tainted. It's crazy.
So COVID class, and then you got assigned to the cathedral.
Yes, I was at the cathedral for 2 years. Yeah.
My assumption is that they assign priests there that they want to keep an eye on. Do you think there's any validity to that?
I don't know. When Bishop, so Bishop usually he has another priest call you and tell you, hey, where you're going. But for your first assignment, he like in person hands you a letter that you then read in front of him.
Even then, he refuses to talk to you.
No. And then he has a conversation. It's usually with your classmates. So it was really cool. And he was just like, yeah, we're going to be spending a fair amount of time together, which was really a real blessing at the cathedral because he's there, for like the bigger feast days and stuff like that. He makes a point of coming to his cathedral, and it was really cool to get to work with that community. There's an amazing young adult group at the cathedral that Father Daniel,
downtown Austin, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I've been to our cathedral.
Oh yeah, it's a gem. Like I am not.
It's a gem or a gym.
A gem.
Okay, I was like, that sucks.
GEM.
JIM from The Office. It's a gym.
It was built in like 1884. Just beautiful stained glass, beautiful place. It's right, like literally you can see the Texas Capitol from the steps.
Oh, cool.
It's awesome.
So one thing that I was just at the Co-Cathedral about a month ago
downtown in Houston,
and I heard because like it was for a deacon ordination.
Oh, nice.
So the cardinal was there, the bishop cardinal was there celebrating the mass and doing all that stuff, right? But one of the things that he did at the end was he thanked everybody that had put it, because I talked about it about a month ago on the show. It's a big production for these ordinations.
Yeah,
a lot of bells and whistles and really cool stuff. But he mentioned he thanked the rector of the cathedral.
Yeah.
So like essentially, it got me thinking of like, yes, I know that the bishop has a ton of responsibilities, and I guess technically he's the pastor of the cathedral, right?
Yes, in a way.
Okay.
If the cathedral is a parish. So not all cathedrals are parishes.
Is it here?
It is in our diocese.
So
yes.
Bishop in Austin is the pastor of that parish, or is there a rector? I just never thought
That's
about
actually
it
a really
before.
good question. So there is a rector, and his name's Father Daniel, and for all intents and purposes, in every way, yes, exactly. In every way, Father Daniel is the pastor of the cathedral. He makes like all the normal decisions that a pastor would make, but the bishop comes and celebrates all the big liturgies. So basically, Father Daniel gets a little bit of the short end of the stick.
Right.
But anyway,
that's kind of how I assumed it happened. Is there was a guy running the day-to-day, and the bishop would come in for the big stuff, because the bishop's has a ton of responsibilities, but also like we see the bishop here. Like he's not.
He can't be there all the time
because he's doing confirmations every weekend or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
It was just an interesting thing that I just never thought about before, because I haven't spent a ton of time in cathedrals.
Yeah.
Like usually it's like when we're traveling, like we'll go to the cathedral in New Orleans, or big life events in the Co-Cathedral in Houston, just because that's where I grew up. But like, I don't spend a lot of time in cathedrals, right? Or whatever. But it's funny because I kind of joked that he was like, "Oh, I want to keep an eye on you," but then you must have done well, because he sent you literally to the furthest point away from him. We're closer to the diocesan offices of Tyler and Houston than we are to Austin.
Are we closer to Tyler?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. So he must trust you, not only to send you as far away as he possibly could, or you pissed him off.
I don't know. I think I had a lot of fun at the cathedral and learned a lot and all that kind of stuff. And I think that that community has it represents the church very well in Austin in a certain way, because literally you have everybody from the people who attend what used to be known as the extraordinary form of the Mass. So like Mass all in Latin, all sorts of stuff like that, to like the Spanish Mass.
Me. Oh, I thought you were pointing to me.
The Spanish Mass in the same church, right? Like, I mean, it is like
Latin and Latina.
It is all over the place. Yeah, exactly. And so it's a really beautiful gift to be there. So yeah.
Last thing that I want people to know about you before we move forward is, of priests that I've actually met, I think you probably have the highest IQ. You're a very smart person. And we're going to talk about you and pastoral stuff, which
sure, yeah.
A lot of people that are very smart, whether they're priests or just, work at engineers or whatever, there's kind of this stereotype that most stereotypes have some truth behind them,
sure,
because they wouldn't exist, if, right? But a lot of very smart people and I just don't click, because like I have a lot of personality and a little bit of brains, and they typically have a lot of brains and a little bit of personality.
You have a fair amount of brains. You've been in our meetings.
You haven't listened to the show.
This is fair. This is fair. But I've heard you in a lot of pastoral council meetings, right? And
but I think that's more of the, like, I've been doing pastoral care for 12 years.
Sure,
so it's like, I think that's more of a personality and like reading the room and that sort of thing, right? Yeah. Which is kind of what I'm saying most smart people typically don't have. It's like, hey, I have this idea, but then when it comes to like implementing stuff with people,
sure,
like engineers, whatever, like scientists, they're like, I have an idea and I'm going to implement it because it's all these numbers and physics and all this kind of stuff, right? But when it comes to like working with people, which is a job,
it's basically
profession,
a priest actually has to do that.
It's a people thing, right? And you're very good at that, which I've been around other priests or seminarians that fizzled out that were like IQ level but didn't have that people part, and you have that people connection. We're going to talk a little bit about that in the next segment, but I bring that all up to say that one of the other like us hanging out for 2 hours was we went to trivia a couple months ago.
Oh, that's right, we did.
And I was incredibly disappointed in you.
I just want to point out, I was the one who invited him to come to trivia that night.
Yeah, and I thought it was an automatic win because you're smart. I got like 40 questions right.
Okay.
You got 3.
No, I got more than 3. Okay, we got it. You see, what we need to do is we need to come up with trivia that includes actual things that matter, as opposed to just movies.
So, movies, sports, culture. You're saying these things don't matter.
No, they do matter. They matter. But no, I'll admit it. I'm horrible at knowing actors and actresses and movies and things like that. Like, unbelievably bad. Right. And it's just been that way since I was a kid. Like, people would be talking. I remember vividly, like in middle school, and they'd be talking about an actor and actress, and I'm like, I have literally no idea who you're talking about. Like, who watches the credits?
What is Tom Hanks?
Yeah, well, I know who Tom Hanks is, but it is crazy, like to think about that. Like that's just not a gift that the Lord has given me, and that's okay. I'm completely okay with that. But it is interesting to, like, I've kind of come in at the back, kind of through the back door with pop culture. Now I read things and watch things because I'm like, okay, something here is really attractive, and I want to know, why is that so attractive?
Right.
Like, why is that so interesting to people? What's going on? And so I'm less concerned about the little details and more like, what's the story? I love story. That's probably one of my favorite.
The themes, the overall thing. And I've heard you say that before, and it's just an incredibly smart pastoral thing. It's like, it's stuff that I don't care about, but if it's the most popular show in the world,
I need to know what it is.
40% of people in the world are watching it. Probably 40% of our parish is watching it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, anyway, we're going to come back, and I'm going to compliment you and then try to tear you down. Does that sound fair?
Sounds great.
All right, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. There's not much time left to sign up for our pilgrimage to Rome. We would love for you guys to join us. We are going there at the end of June of this year, and we'd love to have you come with us. We're going to the heartland of Catholicism. We're going to go to Rome, the Vatican, Assisi, Tuscany, Florence. It's going to be incredible, and I know that you would have a great time if you join us. We've got a great group already going, and we would just love to spend time with you. I'm going, Father Anthony, a bunch of listeners of the show, Liv Harrison and her family. It's going to be an absolute blast. Head on over to fortecatholic.com/travel for more info. If you have any questions, just let me know. We're at the point where we need a few more people to sign up, or we'd like a few more people to sign up before we close it. But come to Rome with us. Come see the Pope. We're going to hang out with Pope Francis. Not hang out with him. We're going to see him from afar. Maybe we'll hang out with him if he happens to go to the same dinner place that we go to. But come and enjoy the beautiful country of Italy and a bunch of great Catholic sites. Come pray with us, eat with us, drink with us, have a grand old time. ForteCatholic.com/travel. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Stroll. That's still Father Will Rooney. I don't know if I said your name for a second. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. But
who knows? Whatever.
Mystery for the audience that's only listening and not watching. Who was that guy?
Yep.
So I had the idea to have you on the show last fall. Like once, like I knew you, and like I was like, oh, like we started building more of a friendship because you were here, and I was like, we were always friendly, but I was like, oh, like we're becoming friends, and I was like, I should have him on the show because he's personable, right?
And I have a podcast, and I got to fill up a spot.
Exactly. Just killing time, But that was in the middle of when you were the pastor for 3 months.
Yes.
So I was like, I'm not adding anything.
I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off all the time. Yeah. So
then our actual pastor came back. You got demoted. And then a few weeks later, I was like, hey, let's do this. Right?
Yeah, it's great.
So I had a note in my phone. How I do my show prep is I have notes in my phone, and then I just
write
stuff
things
together.
down. Yeah.
And like when life happens, when I have weird thoughts during homilies, whether they're good or bad, I like to point them out. That's that sort of thing. So I had a note in my phone a long time ago about how you were doing something very well, and I think you might have transitioned away from it in the last couple of months. So I want to talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
The original compliment was whenever you first got here. People that have listened to it for a while know that the parish was kind of in shambles whenever Father Brian got here. It kind of started healing, and then you got here, a year later, whatever. So things needed to change. Mm-hmm. And a lot of things have changed because it was pretty rough, and now things are very good. So obviously, I'm a fan of change, right? Yeah. And the thing that I was very complimentary of you is, like a lot of younger priests, there's a lot of things that you want to like bring back some cool traditions, right? And there's always going to be some pushback whenever you bring back some old tradition. Oh, we've been doing it here for 40 years. Okay, there's going to be some pushback, right?
Sure.
So I really appreciated how you were, and we even talked about it. I was like, how are you doing this? Like, kind of pastorally, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to remember the exact order, but I remember for like some big masses, you were like, let's do incense.
Yeah, let's do incense. I'm going to chant the mass, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, you weren't chanting the whole thing.
At the big stuff I did. So like at the Assumption, I chanted the whole mass. But
big liturgies.
But it wasn't like every Sunday, and it wasn't it was the people who are coming to that mass, right? They know, right? Like this is a bigger day and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so,
for sure. Yeah. But like on quote unquote normal Sundays, you would chant like the first third of the communion prayer, the Eucharistic prayers, and then you would say the rest of them because you were kind of getting people kind of used to it. Yeah. And then. So I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, it's a way of like, hey, we're going to do one thing. We're going to add one thing for either big solemnities or like one little thing at Sunday.
Sure.
And then we're going to, whether it was incense or chanting the first third of the Eucharistic prayer, or those were like the first two. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And I even told you, I was like, you're doing this.
Sure.
Like, so
in a slow enough way that it's not causing like major waves, right? You get some questions and stuff like that. People ask questions. I like that. Like I love when people say why is this happening? Right. I think that is like a prime moment. That's the moment when catechesis can really actually happen, because it's instead of catechesis, a big word, right? Just teaching can actually happen in the setting. That kind of thing where people will actually take on board the what you're offering.
So I'm going to essentially tell you what the journey I've been on. And I am just a person in the pew.
No, I love it.
But at the same time, I am two things. I'm one, a person that cares about this parish, and I've done some pastoral work.
Yeah.
So I think about it in three different ways, and I argue with myself. I think about it as just like a person attending mass.
Yeah.
I think about it as I have 2% of the responsibility for the pastoral care of our parish, whatever, right?
Yeah,
I also think about it as a parent.
Yes.
So over the last 2 months, there have been a lot of things added that we've gone from where Mass was, I think the general consensus, or not consensus, the general average for Mass is an hour.
About an hour.
In the US, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I've done enough traveling where I go to Mass and it's an hour, unless it's like a big solemnity or whatever, right? Pomp and circumstance, cool. So like when you first started doing those couple of changes, it would be like 61 minutes, 62 minutes. And it's like, okay, like, if we're starting the closing hymn and it's noon at an 11 Mass, you're like, this is okay. But over the last couple of months, my friend,
let's go.
68 minutes, 71 minutes, 73 minutes, 77 minutes.
Yeah.
There was one that it was something like 15, 17 minutes, quote unquote, over. I know it's not, but like over the norm. And you were late to a meeting with me. You kept 4 people waiting because your Mass went long.
What Mass? It was I can't remember.
Marriage prep stuff.
Okay, I don't remember that, but I do. Actually no, it was with the Fagans too, right?
Yes.
Okay, I do remember this.
Yeah.
And that was because we had the rite of acceptance to catechumens, right? There was like a bunch of stuff that was happening that day, and so I mean, like, I do agree that in general, like, it's a reasonable expectation somewhere around an hour. I actually think that that's kind of the wrong way of going about looking at the liturgy. Quite honestly, if I'm going to be honest about pushing back, because it kind of treats it as like, okay, here's my expectation, and this is all I have to give to God, right? This week, and I know that's not what you're saying, but I think that it
is I get a little frustrated, but I'm never really going to complain for myself.
Yeah. But you're wondering, like, okay, what is my kid thinking about this? Or what is
my kids, more people are leaving early. So it's like, I know. I am not saying that you are causing people to sin.
No.
But I'm saying that people are leaving Mass early.
No, yeah. And
because there's this assumption that it's 60 minutes. And like, what is happening is like this past weekend, we started, like, I have a noon, like, I'm not timing your Mass, but I just happen to have the Angelus alarm. I pray the Angelus at noon. So I have an alarm set for every day, and it went off while we're still kneeling.
Yeah.
We haven't even gone to communion.
We haven't gone to communion yet.
So there was a lot of people this Sunday that went to communion and left. Which, like, people are going to do that anyway.
Sure.
But it was like,
there was a fair number
mass
of
exodus.
Yeah, and it is interesting. And so this is where the tension that has to happen, right? Like, was it maybe a little bit longer than I expected it to be this week? Yeah. Like, even I was recognizing
there were some things that were out of your control.
And there were some things that I couldn't control. My homily was a little bit longer, but like, quite honestly, people also said, like, hey, your homily this week was good.
It was good.
And so it
made us pray.
Yeah.
Which is very rare in a homily.
Could it be shorter? Yeah, it could be shorter, right? Like, there's always things that I can do to be shorter. Now, I will say that one of the things we're trying to do at St. Joe's that I think is a good balance, a good tension to have, is like the 11 o'clock is going to be like the higher Mass. So if someone is in need of a kind of a lower Mass experience, quote unquote, they might go to the 7:30 or the 9 or the 5:30. And I recognize that sometimes doesn't work for every family all the time.
See, it's interesting for me to hear you say that.
Yeah.
Because 11's where we can go.
Yeah, I know.
So I don't have a ton of, I guess I've gone to 5:30, maybe.
I've seen you at 5.
Yeah. A lot of times it's like, it's when I'm not feeling good.
I understand. Yeah.
So like, I've been there enough where I guess I just hadn't really noticed.
Yeah.
But I'm also shocked because that has been the family Mass of the parish for forever. And one of my, not complaints, but one of my primary pushbacks is that's the one that's the hardest for families, is because that, and I didn't even know that y'all were like doing that on purpose, right? So I just kind of assumed that every Mass,
is the same.
Were saying was hour 10, hour 15.
No, not every Mass is like that. First of all, just for the sake of, because of communion. Right at the 11 o'clock Mass, there are 500 people there this Sunday, and so for communion,
great.
I
had to sit upstairs.
Yeah, it was amazing, right?
It was
like
awesome.
And so I don't know. There's just I guess I just push back a lot on like the time being the determinant. I don't think that we should be just sitting around doing nothing in liturgy all the time. I think that there's a time for silent prayer within the liturgy after communion. I think that it should flow. It's not. and that kind of thing. I don't think it should drag on. And I certainly never want to give a homily that just is dragging and dragging and dragging for the sake of filling up time. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'm like, this is the most important thing that we do as Catholics. And I know that it's hard, right? Like I have brothers. My brother has 4 kids. My other brother has 3 kids, and they go to mass, and it's like a war, right? Like, and so I'm not a parent, but there's like
that's a parent.
Yeah. I mean, right. Like that's funny. Right. And so it can be a war. At the same time, like I see that, what we spend time on, what we spend energy on, and the level of beauty in the liturgy also has a very positive effect on the formation of children, families, young people, right? Like the fact that like the way that the liturgy is done, it matters because for especially for kids, right? I can talk to them all day, and like they're gonna get like 3 words of what I'm saying, right? Yeah. Like and you know this because my homilies are generally aimed at adults. Like occasionally I throw something in there for the kids, but my homily is generally aimed at an adult level. Mm-hmm. And when I have a school mass, I do it for the school kids, right? But
Sundays is the primary thing we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but the rest of the liturgy is accessible for anyone who walks in the door because you're smelling things, you're hearing things, you're seeing things, and there's so all of those things.
My favorite thing this weekend in regards to seeing things was so I was late to this mass because I had, it was this long thing. My wife works at the church. She was at the church. She had my keys. So I got to the van 12 minutes before mass because it takes us 8 minutes to get there. Sure. Like normal Sunday.
Man, you're driving quick.
And I was like, well, yeah. And I know where it lives. You were looking for it. It's easier for me to but I didn't have my keys. So I was like, I was late. Yeah, that sucks. Nothing I could do about it, right? Yeah. So we got there. She was coming home. So we got there like 5-6 minutes late, right? But so there was no room in the inn, which was great. I was happy about it. So I went upstairs and I sat in this pew, and I was sitting next to a lot of like either current students or former students. Nice. One family. That's awesome. And I was sitting next to this guy. He's a freshman in college now. And I was his small group leader, his coach, his campus minister, everything since he was in 6th grade. Right. That's awesome. So there was one moment where we couldn't see you because we're sitting in the back of the top, so we couldn't see you. So it was like an audio experience for us. So at one point, it was funny because we were like the whole time we couldn't see you. Yeah. So it was hard to kind of connect that way. Yeah. But at one point you said, "Where is Jesus?" And we both just pointed at the crucifix because the crucifix is all the only thing you can see.
That's awesome.
But so let me lay out. I'm not the priest. I'm not the pastor, right?
No, please. I like this.
I was talking with one of my other priest friends about length of mass, and just because I was thinking about it, I was with him, and he was like, "Well, you have to be careful not to push back too much because this is literally what you were ordained for, right?" So like,
I don't mind. I actually think that these conversations are really important to have. So I'm not like afraid. Like I've seen it done well in 55 minutes, and I've seen it done well at the cathedral, and this is where I'm coming from.
Daily mass is 55 minutes.
No. That is not true. Daily. It's interesting though because my daily masses, I'm like, people got to go to work.
Yeah.
27 minutes, 28 minutes.
That's how I feel on Sundays during football season. It's like the game start at noon. Come on.
See, I totally disagree with that. Sunday is for the Lord. But anyway.
Okay, so here's my actual, if I was the pastor, right? If I was trying to put myself in your shoes, right?
Sure.
Of where understanding that you care about these things and the things that you're adding are clearly things that you care about.
Yeah.
What I would do, probably because it's what I've seen the most from other priests or whatever, is like, so essentially what has happened is we have now added all these things that I think are good things individually. So
sure, yeah. So we're chanting, we're using Eucharistic Prayer 1,
which is the long one.
It's the long. I just want to point out it's 2 minutes longer than the shortest one.
Sure.
It is. Go read it.
I've been to your masses. So we've also these are all good things.
Yeah.
There's not one of these things that we have added that I don't like. Incense, the readings, your homilies are a little longer than I think people are used to.
Yeah,
but
sure.
they're good, which is also something I'm not used to. So
Sure.
like there's a balance there. The long Eucharistic prayer.
The children's bulletins.
Children's
and
bulletins.
bringing back the offertory, bring it up.
Bring it up, and then all like kids bringing up their offertory thing.
Yeah.
But then also another thing, like probably my favorite thing that has been added just because I had never seen it before, and I think it's incredibly cool because I've been one of the people that has brought communion to like the homebound or old folks communities or whatever.
Yeah.
So what we do at the end of Mass is like, if you are bringing, you or Father Brian will call up everybody.
Yeah.
If you are bringing communion to the sick, please come forward. And you give the
give
host
them a pyx,
and say a prayer for them. And I was just like, man, like that's probably my favorite addition because I've never seen it anywhere. And just like when I would go and give communion to those people, I felt like they were just not part of the community. They were just kind of an add-on. And so including it in the Sunday Mass makes the whole community
recognize
them, recognize them, they're there.
Yeah.
Like that's probably my favorite addition. But again, if we're at this Mass where all this other stuff is happening, that's happening 68 minutes into the Mass. And I'm like,
you're like, can we go? Yeah.
So all of those things are good things. And there's been, I never bring this up in parish conversations unless it's with you, but it has come up where like everybody's noticing that both you and Father Brian are using the longer Eucharistic prayer, right?
Yeah.
And what I have seen in the past is for people who are good homilists, like both of you are, it's like, I'm going to give a good homily, it's going to be a little longer. So typically the decision is on the Masses where I preach longer,
I'm going to use Eucharistic prayer.
I'm going to use Eucharistic prayer 3 because it's literally a decision you can make in the moment, right?
Yeah.
Where you're like, if I give an 8-minute homily, okay, I'm going to use the longer Eucharistic prayer. Or I gave a 20-minute homily, even if it was good, I'm going to use Eucharistic prayer 3.
Yeah.
So there's like some balance there that I get what you're saying. And like, you're essentially going back to the original point. It's like, yes, you're right. I think most of the community have this assumption that Mass is an hour. And I think at first you were trying to slowly bring us there. And then all of a sudden it wasn't slowly. And I think both myself and some other people are starting to.
No, that's good feedback. I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, it is one of those things where you get over like an hour 5 and you're like, and to be vulnerable, right? Like unfortunately there's a clock up there, right? And so like, I understand that, but I purposefully, unless there is a dire need for us to be done within an hour, I try not to pay attention to time. Right. And I know that could sound like I'm not being caring for the people, but no, it's because I care so much about the liturgy. And like the fact that when we're in the liturgy, we're kind of stepping out of the humdrum every day. There's a distinction. I don't know if you ever made it on the show between kairos and chronos. Have you ever heard of this?
I've heard it. I don't think we talked about it.
Okay. So basically chronos is like what we think of as time all the time, right? Like no pun intended. So you're like moving from A to B to C to D. Kairos is like the Greeks had this sense of like an eternal now. Right. And so when you're stepping into the liturgy, you're stepping into that. Now, of course, the reality is we're also in time right now. And so like
when we're at Mass, we're in something that's happening in heaven and on earth.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of, but there's something about that I think that we need that. We like our culture needs it. Like I need it. Right. Like as a person, I recognize that I am constantly looking at my phone. I am constantly looking at my watch. I'm constantly saying, what is the next thing that I have to go to? And I think that there is something very catechetically, very teaching wise, that's good about saying, yeah, sometimes Mass is an hour. Sometimes it's an hour and 5 minutes. Sometimes it's an hour and 10, but we're going to hang out and talk after Mass anyway. Right. And we're going to, we're doing these things. So I'm not saying every Mass all the time. I'm not saying all that it's I'm not saying that we have to do that. Like every Mass has to be a solemn high, like beautiful, something like that. No, you heard me earlier with the daily Mass thing. Yeah. We got to go. Right. But,
I got to go get a sandwich after this.
Yeah. I gotta go back to work. Right. Or I got to get to work. And so there's different things for different times. I do think one of the other things that I want to learn more about that. I've been meaning to read this encyclical for a long time. Mm-hmm. There's an encyclical by John Paul II called Dies Domine, which is just the day of the Lord.
Oh, cool.
And it talks, I've read little pieces here and there, and it talks about like the necessity for Sunday to overflow from just like going to mass on Sunday, right? It has to feel different, has to be different. And I wonder if sometimes we've allowed a little bit of the pragmatism to come into our celebration of the liturgy. But at the same time, like, I just want to be very clear. The pastoral component of like being attractive to newcomers at a mass is important, because that's right now where we're at in the church with regard to like, this is the thing that a lot of newcomers come to, which we could have a whole nother argument about whether that's the
which
thing
we've done at Pastoral Care.
Yeah, which we shouldn't, right? Like we should not, at least that's my opinion, that like the mass is not the first thing. Yeah. It's not the first thing that you invite someone to. They need to, someone at mass, generally speaking, should be a follower of Jesus. Mm-hmm. So, but then of course in my homilies, I'm always saying, if you haven't met Jesus yet, you can meet him right now. Right. Like,
but okay. So that's the people I want to close with.
Yeah.
Is I think, most of your answers have been helpful for me to hear as somebody who is, pursuing faith and like
generally well-formed.
I think I need to break more into this kairos than chronos thing. And I think that's helpful for me to hear. I don't think it's helpful for the people who are leaving early no matter what. Yeah. There are people who are going to leave early at 50 minutes if you did an hour. There's people that are going to leave at 60 minutes. But I have seen more of an exodus.
Yeah. And it breaks my heart.
And mine too. Which is actually why I'm concerned. Yeah. I can sit here and gripe and complain, which is what I do on the show every week. Like I can gripe and complain with the best of them, right? But recently it has shifted less from me to more like, these are good people leaving that have never heard the terms kairos and chronos, and that like are people who need those homilies where you're saying, I need to meet Jesus, because there are people in our pews that have been there for 20 years that need to meet Jesus, right? So like, that's actually kind of the people I'm concerned about, them and parents of young kids, right? So first with the people who are, let's talk about that group of people, the people who are leaving, who don't really have a connection with their faith. They know this is what they're supposed to do. They're doing it, but they're getting frustrated and leaving. Like, you said it breaks your heart, but like, how do you deal with like, that's the primary question I've been struggling with. Is like, how do we as a parish deal with this pastorally? Yeah. Because a ton of people are leaving.
Yeah.
Because of this incorrect assumption that it's an hour, but it is an assumption for a reason.
Yeah. And we got to recognize where people are at, right? So that's a good question. I don't think that the only option is to make mass shorter. Mm-hmm. I think that there's more creative ways that we can approach it. And I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but if we got some committed missionary disciples in the parish, and we certainly do.
At least five.
We got more than that. Praise God. Having, for example, I had a mom come up to me the other day, and she was like, we need to have donuts outside of mass every Sunday.
Amen and amen.
I know, on many levels, right? And I was like, that would be amazing. Can you lead it? And she was like, yeah, I think I could figure out how to do that.
The answer's usually no. You need to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you help? No, absolutely not.
Exactly. So she was like, okay, let's see if we can figure this out. And I think things like that, where you have some committed people out there.
You don't get a donut if you leave early.
No. You get a donut. You still get the donut, right? But you're there, right? And you and then people, you're like, wait, all these people are staying. What am I missing? Why am I when I just dart out the door after communion, like there's something missing there. Mm-hmm. And those conversations can actually start happening, and maybe you kind of purposely say, okay, will you come to this other thing that we're having? Like, I would love if you come to that. And as a priest, like, I try and do that. I don't know if you probably notice this because you stay till the final blessing, right. But most of the time, Father Brian and I are out there before the mass gets out, and neither of us ever would say to that person coming out, like, "Get back, you sinner!" Right? Like it's always like,
that's what the bouncers are for.
Yeah. We can have another conversation about this group of people. Anyway, but yeah, so I think that's one thing.
Y'all do that very well.
Being out there, being present, being with, having people, making an effort, maybe even occasionally having a homily and saying things like, hey, let's talk about why it's important to stay to the end of Mass, right? Like, and it worked. I don't know if you were there at the Ash Wednesday service that I was at the.
I was at one with you,
and
you were at like 12.
Yeah, so 5. Yeah, so
5 really? That's been our running joke the whole time. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I was outside after all of them, but there were anyway. So that's funny. I just got the joke. Anyway, it had been a tradition for a long time in the parish that we did ashes at the end of Ash Wednesday service, so people could just leave afterwards. And I just said, hey, after you receive your ashes, if you'd return to your pews, we're all going to pray the Our Father together.
Yeah, I was unsure why we didn't do that before.
Because it says literally in the book to do it the way that I did it, right? So, and because it makes way more sense. If you think about it, like you receive the mark of like you're being claimed for Christ, and then we're all together praying to Jesus.
Yeah, I didn't. That didn't bother me at all. I'm joking. But when it did bother me one time was, it bothered me more. Like I didn't go to a Mass. I went to an Ash Wednesday service.
Oh yeah.
Like what Ash Wednesday when we have to go get our ashes and then go back through and get communion. I was like, what? This is taking forever. Anyway, that's not the point of what we're talking about. But
that's funny. No, but it is funny. Yeah.
Like that but yeah, I was sitting there this past Sunday and just watching people leave, and I was just like, man.
Yeah. So I think that would be one of my thoughts as like a brainstorm to be there. The other thing is just to.
I think just addressing it. Sorry, I cut you off. But I think like you addressed the thing at Ash Wednesday, so people stayed.
Yeah, people stayed.
So I think if we are going to keep these where Masses are
a little bit longer, 10 minutes longer, right?
18. Then I do think it needs to be addressed, if nothing else, right? Which I think will be helpful. So
that's good.
One of my favorite the other favorite thing that I know some priests don't like, but it's actually one of my favorite things because I joke all the time that I just forget unless I take notes, I forget them by the time we're out there. I'm like, hey, I really enjoyed it because I remember enjoying it. What did you say? I have no idea. Sure. So I see Father Brian do it. He does it every Mass.
Yeah, I do it less.
I don't know if you do, but he does a little 2-sentence reminder homily before the final blessing.
Yeah.
And dude, I'm telling you, I think about his homilies all week.
That's good. Yeah.
But because it's what I don't know just how my brain works, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like I remember it, but then I'm praying about other stuff at communion. Like I've moved on. I've moved on from the homily, right? And I there was a bishop that did it, and all that I adore. That all my priest friends were like, oh, he's adding something to the Mass. It's not in the rubrics, whatever. But dude, it's been so helpful to me, and I've really liked that. The other thing that y'all do is I've never seen this anywhere else. The consistency with which you are outside before and after Masses he is saying, and he is outside before and after Masses that you are saying. You know what I mean?
Sure,
I might have mixed those up.
We're there.
But y'all are there and just being part of the community. Dude, it's awesome. I love that so much.
Thank you. No, that means a lot to me. And I think that is one of the things that maybe an older priest, I don't remember, like you cannot go a direction in a parish as a priest if you don't, like, this is my family, right? Imagine if you just came into your family and just were like, this is it. We're just doing this. And
that's what I do.
Well, yes. Imagine if you did that with your extended family who are all adults who have thoughts and it doesn't, it would not fly. Sure. Right. Like, and that's like people, like, I love St. Joseph's, and when I say St. Joseph's, I don't mean the building, although it's beautiful. I mean the people. Like, I love the people of St. Joseph, and I want them to go to heaven. That's like, I eagerly desire that. And I think that one of the things that it just was driven really clear to me is just, you got to know people. You got to talk to people. You got to love people. And that doesn't mean that, like, I'm an extrovert, so it's a lot easier for me than I have some brother priests who are introverts, and they're great priests, and they're praying for their people. I know they are. Like,
they're just not as cool.
No, that's not true. And it's interesting. Well, maybe they are. And praise God. Like it's just like we don't know right? We don't know their sanctity, and I barely know my own sanctity. May it please
I'm
God.
pretty clear on mine and the lack thereof.
Oh my gosh. Thomas Aquinas says we can have moral certainty, but not absolute certainty that we're in a state of grace.
Right.
So
I'm in the state of Texas. And that's even better. I'm just kidding.
That's awesome.
That's how we're ending. Okay, so
Wonderful.
I appreciated this. This was good. We didn't fight. We did it. We did it.
Way to go, man.
We did. When we come back, we're going to talk about slippery slope arguments and how I might not be a fan of them. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. There's only a couple weeks left of Lent. That is insane. It is almost Holy Week, almost Easter. And one of the 3 pillars of Lent is almsgiving. If you haven't done that part yet, we could really use your help. We're just kind of making it day by day here financially at Forte Catholic. We could really use your support. So if you like the work that we're doing, the ministry that we're doing through our the podcast and our YouTube channel, also with helping other podcasts like the 25 that we've worked with since COVID hit, that old Father Mike Schmitz guy. I'm sure some of you have heard of him. Some of the great shows like Way of the Heart with Jake Kim. It just some great shows we're working with. Pints with Jack. Sinner Saint Sister with Alice Sullivan. We got a lot of great shows that we're working with. If you want to support Catholic podcasting, Catholic evangelization, and just the Catholic ministry, we would really appreciate it. ForteCatholic.com/donate is where you can go to give a one-time donation, or the most helpful things to give a monthly donation just to kind of help us meet our budget every month. We really appreciate it. All donations are tax deductible since we are a 501c3 nonprofit. It is tax season. So, it's too late to donate for last year, but if you donate right now, it'll help with your taxes next year. So we can both thank each other next March 2024. ForteCatholic.com/donate. Thank you guys so much for your support. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I'm Taylor Stroll. That's still Father Will. And we are still friends, amazingly enough.
We are.
So, he punched me in between segments. It was super weird, but
right after you put me in a headlock, okay? Like
it was self-defense. I want to talk about slippery slope arguments, and I have one primary example.
Great.
I know that there are more that frustrate me, but I don't want to go over on our podcast time, which is very funny. I literally just realized that this show used to be under 60 minutes, and it had to be because it was live on radio and it had to be under 60 minutes.
And now it's not.
Now I have the freedom. Now they're like an hour 17.
Hey, man.
It's very funny. I just realized that. Just a little bit of introspection. Hilarious. Okay. So I got into an argument with somebody about this, and it was just a whole different frame of mind. And I think he's wrong. He clearly thinks I'm wrong. And we're both Catholics who are well-formed and all this kind of stuff, right? We were talking about the 60-minute fast from before you receive communion, which the typical argument there is it 60 minutes before Mass or 60 minutes before communion? The correct answer is 60 minutes before communion. So literally, if you're going to your Mass, you can eat as you're walking in.
Maybe. I guess that could be a benefit, right?
Right, yeah. That's very funny. I hadn't thought about that. But okay. It's 60 minutes before Mass. So like for daily Mass, it gets a little harder, and people are at lunch or whatever. But like essentially, I've been in situations like that. Let's say, even for like it typically happens on like retreats or something where I'm busy and I haven't, and I'm like, I eat and I ate something. Let's either purposefully or either way, whether it's purposeful or I just kind of forgot about the fast or whatever. And I eat a little granola bar, and then it's like, by the time I was like, let's say I'm going to 11, and let's say your Mass ends at noon. It's a miracle. If I go at 11, let's say I ate something at 10:50.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm looking at communion. Communion's at 10:47.
Yeah.
And younger in my years,
sure.
I've literally done this where I was in like the 4th row, and I went to the back of the Mass and got to the end of the line so I could follow this rule. And I received almost exactly 60 minutes after I'd eaten this granola bar at a retreat when I was in high school, right? Because I didn't want to break the rule.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say where we were because I don't want to call this person out, but we were at this thing, and just because of the schedule of the day, we had to eat right then, and then we had Mass, and it was going to be a daily Mass. So
there's no way. Yeah.
There's no way. Like we had to eat a meal, because that's how our schedule required for the day. You can argue if you want, but it's just the reality situation, right? And he was like, I'm not going to receive because it was going to be like 54 minutes. Like I literally looked because we had talked about it, and it ended up being 54, 55 minutes, something like that, from whenever we finished our food to communion. And I was just like, dude, it's fine. Like to me, it seems like a kind of arbitrary rule. There's a spirit behind the rule. The actual letter of the law says 60 minutes, but I've received at 57 minutes. I've received at 58. If it's 12, I'm not going to receive, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the slippery slope argument, people are like, if you received at 57, the next time it's going to be 56, the next time it's 55. And then all of a sudden you're eating a chewy bar as you're walking down the aisle. It's like, who's going to do that? You know? Like, it's not an all the time thing. It was just kind of one time special circumstances. And I was just like, look, there's some gray here.
Yeah.
There's God's. Do you really think you're like, you live your whole life for God? I picture this all the time. Your whole life for God. And God's like, well, you did everything good. You had a chewy bar 3 minutes early. Go to hell. And I'm just like, come on. That's not the God I know.
Sure. Yeah.
But there is some validity to the actual rules and following what the church says. So there's a little bit of tug, but I kind of land on the gray side of things.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple things that I would say, right? One, there's the principle that it is good, and we are obliged to follow lawful authority.
Right.
I mean, that's like the church says.
I may or may not struggle with authority. That may be part of it.
That's true. It's okay. So that's one thing. The other principle that I would say is the discernment of a particular situation can, in some cases, dispense from an obligation, right? So if it was like, this is the last time that you're going to be able to receive communion for months, you should receive communion, right? Like it would be a reasonable person would say that. And then, so that's one thing. The other thing is like, no one's obliged to receive communion every time. Now, I think you should receive communion when you go to Mass if you're in a state of grace. And I think a person should prepare themselves.
The reason we ate late is because confession went long.
Yeah.
We're all in pristine condition.
Yeah. So, so I would also this may not be something that's in every diocese, but at least in the Diocese of Austin, every priest has the ability to dispense from the obligation to fast before communion. So literally that's like a 30-second conversation. Hey, Father, we ate because confession went long, and now we're going to Mass. Is it okay if I receive communion? Yes, you receive communion. So I know that it seems so arbitrary, but there is like this obedience that teaches us, and there's also this. And I'm not saying you should do this all the time, or that a person. I'm saying you, but I'm not saying you. I'm saying a person should do it all the time. But there's nothing like sinful or wrong with going to Mass and not receiving communion, right? Like, and there could be a real holiness or like a real goodness in this man's heart that you're talking about, where he's like, I'm gonna follow this rule, even though it does seem a little bit arbitrary, because I want to be better at obedience, right? And I want to do that. No, I'm not saying you made a bad decision. I'm not judging the state of your soul at all, right? Like, I'm just thinking of those things with regard to like all of the different competing, because I've also had this situation in seminary, right? Like where you're eating something in class and Mass is right after class and you didn't even think about it. And you're like, crap, right? Or I just drank some tea, right? I'm like, okay, there's, like, if you accidentally eat, I think that's also another competing thing. Yeah. So the slippery slope thing, I see kind of both sides of this.
I was interested in your perspective because I don't hear confessions.
Yeah. No,
and I would imagine some things are slippery slope, like drinking, drugs, pornography, things that are addictive. Those things are kind of slippery slopes, but I just don't think my first example falls into that category.
I don't think that it's certainly not like addictive. I think that for this does come down to the individual in a lot of cases. Some people have a tendency towards and could be for just genetic predisposition. They could just be the way they were raised, could be experiences, whatever. It doesn't really matter why, but they have a tendency towards like really deep scrupulosity, where there's this this real fear of God all the time.
That's where this person was coming from, and I'm on the opposite spectrum.
Yeah,
where like I'm gonna this rule's so stupid, I'm not gonna follow.
Yeah, so if I was gonna give advice to the person who struggles with that, with the scrupulosity, I would probably tell them, unless you are 100% sure that you, for example, I've said this to people, unless you're 100% sure you've committed a mortal sin, you have not committed a mortal sin. There is, like, your conscience is overly over the top, right? Whereas I might say to someone on the other side of the spectrum,
now you can say me.
I wouldn't possibly judge. Hey, you should probably be more concerned about trying to follow these smaller things, the things that seem smaller.
So
just
ultimately,
because of the tenets.
I went to communion, he didn't, and we should have flipped that.
Honestly, if like someone had asked me like right then and there, and I knew both people really well, that's probably the advice that I would have said. But I don't think that, like, it's like
it's hilarious,
a huge terrible thing, and so those slippery slope things, they can be used in a bad way to just like basically make God out to be a policeman. God is not a policeman.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just like, I have followed the 60-minute thing every day of my life, every mass I've ever been to, except like I remember the one in high school. I probably did one other one in college.
Yeah.
So I've probably broken that rule twice in my entire life.
Yeah.
One, I had good reason. One, I was probably being a jerk, right?
Sure.
But this one, I was like, come on, man.
No, I think
am I really going to go up to the priest after and be like, can I receive communion now? Just give it to me now. It's
Yeah,
just like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So it was interesting. Like you one of the things he talked about was the dispensation from the priest, where he knew about that. I'm not going to, I'm just the person. I'm just not going to bother somebody.
Sure. Yeah. I understand.
But that's what he was saying. Like, we were arguing about this after mass because I received and he didn't. And he was like,
sure. He was like,
mad about it or whatever.
Yeah. Why'd you do that? Yeah.
And I was like, look, dude, like his big thing was you as a layperson. We were both lay people. He's like, you as a layperson can't dispense yourself from that. It has to be a priest. And I'm like, dude, it's 3 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, it is 3 minutes. So and you might have been wrong about looking at your watch, right? And I think in doubt, you should receive communion, right? But I do have great respect for the authority of the church, right? Like, I promised respect and obedience to the bishop, and that also includes.
That's why I'm not a priest or deacon.
I mean, you promised in a certain sense respect and obedience to your wife, right, and your family.
It's not the same relationship as bishop to priest. I promise you.
That's true. May it please God. Yes, thank you. But yeah, so there's something there. There's something about authority that, and I feel this in myself, right? Like, sometimes I'm like, I just don't like authority, right? Like, and I think that's a tendency that we have that can be problematic.
Well, good. I had this conversation so I could decide which one of us was right. You said we were both wrong. Awesome. Well, that's our show. That's Father Will. I'm so glad that you were here. I'm so glad we had the conversations that we did.
This was great.
And ironically enough, we went long and you're going to be late to a meeting, and that brings me so much joy. Don't go. I almost said don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We're not going to be right back. We're leaving. I'm Taylor Stroll. I'll be back next week. That's Father Will. He might come back sometime. We'll talk to you soon. See ya. Thank you guys for watching and listening today. I hope that you enjoyed those great conversations with Father Will Rooney. We had an absolute blast recording here. He's great. I just really, really enjoyed it. I hope that you did too. If you did, please hit subscribe wherever you are watching or listening. If you're listening to the podcast, go over to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Forte Catholic. We've got a lot of stuff going on there, not just the podcast. We hope that you'll enjoy all of it. If you're listening on podcasts, leave us 5 stars, leave a review. All that stuff really does help. Share this with a friend today. If you know somebody that would love a conversation about slippery slopes, or love a conversation about pastoral care and arguing about the Mass, who doesn't like arguing about the Mass? It's all anybody does on the internet anyway. Share it with somebody. Love you. See you soon.